So over the next few videos, I want to talk about an influence that is very significant for my work, for me personally as well, not simply professionally. I don't remember when I was first exposed to the 7 Habits by Covey, but I don't think I fully understood at that time how really important they really were. And I did eventually. And so what I want to do in these next series of videos is I want to break down kind of the key parts there. The original book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Another great book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, written by Covey's son. Another book by Covey's son, The 7 Habits of Happy Kids, which I also think very highly of. And then The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families, which to me was a little bit of a repackaging that didn't end up being quite as good or quite as necessary. But these 3 versions, the original and then those 2 versions for those target audiences, I really recommend not simply listening to me talk about them, but to access them yourselves, maybe after you've listened to my introduction to the different parts, but I think they're really, really well worth it. I'm going to put the last 2 habits together. So the 6th habit is the last of the 3 habits that Covey said were the public victory. That is our interaction with other people. And then the 7th habit that feeds back into the whole of the habits. So the 6th habit is to what he calls to synergize. And I have to admit, I'm not a big fan of this habit in terms of its naming, because I find it's too jargony. But aside from that, it's a good habit. It's really the recognition that when we are working with other people, the sum of the parts is greater than the parts themselves. That is to say, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 is 3 or 4 or 5. Not mathematically, obviously, but in terms of the effect. And so this is a recognition that there is goodness in the difference that other people bring to us. And if we can harness that properly, then we can get more out of it than simply relying on ourselves, right? So there are times, obviously, that I believe I can work faster, more efficiently. I can do better on my own than when I'm working with somebody else. But at the same time, there is another adage that says, if you want to go fast, travel alone. If you want to go far, travel together. And so there's greater longevity in our relationships, our professional and our family and our friendship and so on, all of our relationships, in the connection that we have with others. And so, as I said, we harness that. We try to tie into that, and then we get something more out of that. Again, not in a utilitarian, self-serving kind of a way, but in a everything is better for everyone kind of a way. So that's the 6th habit. So think about that as you're heading into this next week. And then the 7th habit that I'm going to join here together is what Covey calls sharpen the saw. And I love the visualism on this. Covey says that if you are going to cut down a tree with a dull saw, and you just keep going, and you don't take time to deal with the saw, then it's going to take you a very long time. And actually, I've experienced this on my own in actual fact with a saw, where I had an old saw that was not very effective, but it was what I had, and I didn't want to have to buy another saw when I already had one. So I would use it and use it and use it. It was just so difficult to use. And eventually I got to the point where I thought, I'm just going to buy it. It's not that expensive. I'll just buy a replacement blade for my electric saw, or I actually bought a different saw for a hand saw. And just using those, especially at the very beginning, was amazing at how much better, first of all, the cuts were, but second of all, how much faster my work went. And so Covey is saying, if you take the time to sharpen the saw, then the end result makes the whole process go faster. You might think, I'm not doing the dedicated task that I'm supposed to be doing, and therefore I'm wasting my time. But in actual fact, the work that you do to rejuvenate, in this case yourself, actually helps you to be more effective. You are a better mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter, friend, employee, etc. So don't feel guilty about the way that you make use of your time to rejuvenate. We're going to talk later on about leisure, right? Leisure is not lazing. It is a good use of your time for very good reasons. And we recognize that. We have time off because we recognize that. Obviously, we push this to an extreme. No one would think it makes sense to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We know that's not sustainable. I don't know how fast we would find that out very, very quickly. But by kind of examining that, we realize we don't even have to go to that extreme to realize that there really is a need for proper rest, right? And that rest is a sharpening of the saw. So again, look at your life and realize, where is it that I can, and I give myself permission to rest, and where is it that I already do rest? And I make sure that I'm not feeling guilty about that. That's important too.